Welcome, the anointed ones. The moment you stop reacting is the moment people start investigating. Let's be honest, nobody gets studied this closely for no reason. People don't pull out mental notebooks, track patterns, replay conversations, and quietly analyze your behavior unless something about you refuses to fit their expectations. This isn't curiosity. This is confusion mixed with disbelief, because in their mind, your life was supposed to follow a predictable script, and instead, you went off script without asking permission. Here's a fact most people don't talk about. Behavioral researchers have long noted that humans become most fixated on individuals who break prediction models, not the loud ones, not the flashy ones, but the calm, consistent, unbothered ones who keep progressing without drama. That's why criminals get profiled. Not because they're loud, but because they don't behave the way the system expects. When someone can't be easily read, they get studied closely. Now add a little everyday reality to that. You didn't crash when pressure showed up. You didn't unravel when things got unfair. You didn't start performing for sympathy or explaining yourself to stay liked. And that's where the obsession quietly began. Because nothing unsettles people more than someone who survives without advertising their struggle. It messes with the mental math. The numbers stop adding up. And when people don't understand the math, they start checking the work. So now you've got watchers, not fans, not supporters, observers. The kind who remember things you forgot you ever said. The kind who notice your timing, your silence, your shifts. The kind who laugh around you but analyze you when you leave the room. And the funny part? They don't even realize how obvious it is. They think they're subtle. They're not. Surveillance always looks calm on the surface and frantic underneath. What makes this almost comical is that you're not doing anything dramatic. You're just existing without the chaos they expected. No breakdown, no public unraveling. No storyline they can summarize to feel superior. Just you, moving forward, minding your business, unknowingly living rent-free in several overworked imaginations. And that's exactly why this topic matters. Because once you understand why people start studying you like a case file under bright lights, you stop internalizing their attention as pressure and start recognizing it for what it really is, a response to something they can't control, can't decode, and definitely can't ignore. Number one, they're not watching you to copy you. They're watching to understand why you survived. At first, they didn't think you were special. That part matters. They didn't see you as a threat, a standout, or someone worth monitoring. You were supposed to fold quietly under pressure, the same way most people do. Life was supposed to rough you up, slow you down, maybe humble you in a way that kept you small and predictable. When that didn't happen, something inside them got unsettled. What they're trying to understand now isn't your success or your confidence. It's your endurance. You went through things that usually leave people bitter, unstable, or visibly damaged, yet you kept moving forward without turning into what hurt you. That's the part they can't wrap their heads around. Survival without visible scars doesn't compute for people who measure strength by noise. So they start watching closely. They pay attention to how you speak, how you respond, how you don't overshare. They replay interactions in their minds, searching for clues, not because they want your life, but because they want answers. They want to know what held you together when everything around you was designed to break you apart. There's also an uncomfortable mirror effect at play. Your survival highlights moments where they gave up, compromised themselves, or stayed stuck longer than they should have. Watching you becomes a way to sit with that discomfort without directly facing it. If they can figure out what made you different, they can tell themselves it was something external, something they didn't have access to. Anything except the truth that resilience is a choice repeated quietly over time. That's why their attention feels intense. It's not admiration, And it's not rivalry. It's unresolved curiosity mixed with disbelief. You're walking evidence that pressure doesn't automatically ruin people. And for someone who used hardship as an excuse, that realization is deeply disturbing. So they study you the way people study an outcome that shouldn't exist. Not to replicate it, not to celebrate it, but to understand how it happened at all. Because as long as your survival remains unexplained, it keeps challenging the story they tell themselves about why they didn't survive their own battles the same way. Number 2, obsession starts when their narrative about you breaks down. They had a story, a carefully constructed mental script that made sense of who you were, what you were capable of, and where you would fail. In their heads, you fit into a box, predictable, manageable, containable. You were supposed to struggle, stumble, maybe even fold at the right moment so they could point and feel justified. That story kept them comfortable. It allowed them to measure their own worth against your expected failures without feeling threatened. Then you broke it, slowly, subtly, but unmistakably. You didn't act according to their timeline or their expectations. You didn't crumble when pressure showed up. You didn't seek permission to succeed. And you didn't perform for validation. Everything they thought they knew about you stopped working. That's when the obsession begins. Because humans are wired to stabilize chaos, and you became a living contradiction to their sense of order. They start analyzing you like a puzzle missing its last piece. Every detail, every interaction, every choice you make suddenly carries weight. They aren't just curious, they're desperate. They need to understand why reality doesn't match their story. Your consistency, composure, and growth are now an anomaly they feel compelled to study. Their minds replay your actions over and over, trying to decode what they can't predict, hoping to restore control over a narrative that no longer exists. This is why obsession isn't casual. It's driven by cognitive discomfort. Your existence challenges their assumptions about cause and effect, about effort and outcome, about who survives and who doesn't. Every step you take is under scrutiny because it refuses to fit the version of you they've built in their heads. They're not just watching. They're trying to reconstruct reality in a way that doesn't make them feel wrong or left behind. And the more unbothered you remain, the stronger their fixation grows. They thought they had the script, but the script vanished the moment you refused to follow it. Watching you now is less about you and more about them, scrambling to make sense of a world that suddenly stopped fitting their narrative. Number 3, you've become proof that their excuses are lies. Nothing frustrates people more than when reality proves their excuses wrong. They've spent years justifying their own inaction, their compromises, their failures with reasons that sounded logical in their heads. They told themselves it was the circumstances, the timing, the people around them, or just bad luck that held them back. And then there's you, moving forward, surviving, thriving, and doing it without having to explain, apologize, or conform to their expectations. Every step you take silently exposes the stories they've been telling themselves as the fragile, convenient lies they truly are. They watch closely because you are living evidence that things could have been done differently. Every small success you achieve, every calm response to pressure, every boundary you hold firm becomes a mirror they don't want to face. It reflects the parts of themselves they've been avoiding, the courage they could have claimed, the integrity they could have practiced, the resilience they could have built. Your life, without trying to prove anything, disproves their excuses, and that makes their obsession almost compulsive. The truth is, when someone becomes a walking contradiction to the narrative we've used to protect our ego, it rattles us. That rattling isn't about envy. It's about cognitive dissonance. They are forced to confront the uncomfortable fact that what they believed as limits, as rules, as reasons not to try, are not universal. Your reality is the proof that their excuses were optional, not necessary. And this is why the intensity of their observation grows. They want to understand your methods, your mindset, your timing. Anything that will help them reconcile the gap between their own stagnation and your unstoppable movement. But no amount of watching, no amount of analysis can change the fact that your life, your composure, and your persistence exist independently of their opinions or validations. You've become undeniable proof that excuses are only effective if you let them be, and nothing exposes that more than someone who refuses to be limited by them. Number 4, they monitor your reactions because they want to locate your breaking point. People who are obsessed with you aren't watching to admire or understand in a healthy way. They're scanning for weakness, searching for the moment when your composure cracks. Every expression, every pause, every subtle shift in tone becomes data. They're not interested in your victories. They're obsessed with proving to themselves that you're human, that you have limits, that eventually you will falter, just like they imagine everyone does. It's almost like they're running an experiment in real time, trying to predict the exact moment they can see you break and validate their assumptions about resilience. What makes it intense is that they're rarely conscious of their own fear. They fear unpredictability, they fear being outpaced, and they fear a truth they can't control. That some people endure pressure without collapsing, so they scan, analyze, and replay your actions endlessly, hoping to catch a hint of insecurity or frustration. Every calm smile, every controlled reaction, every unbothered response is a challenge to their expectations, and that only makes them more vigilant. Their attention feels invasive because it's constant, methodical, and focused on vulnerability. They are not looking for ordinary human reactions. They are looking for cracks, missteps, or emotional exposure that proves you're fallible in the exact way they assumed you would be. It's a kind of obsession born out of fear and disbelief, a mixture of envy and a desperate need to normalize your existence within their worldview. What's remarkable, and what fuels their quiet panic, is that you rarely give them the evidence they're hunting for. Your resilience isn't loud, it's steady. Your responses don't conform to drama or expectation. They watch harder because every reaction they don't get becomes proof of something they can't reconcile, that some people truly operate on a level of self-control, awareness, and endurance that cannot be cracked, bought, or manipulated. And that's why they monitor you so intensely. Not out of admiration, not out of love for what you've built, but because they are trying to find a breaking point that doesn't exist, and every time they fail, their obsession deepens. Number 5. Your calm creates more anxiety than confrontation ever could. People understand chaos. They know how to respond to anger, arguments, emotional outbursts, and dramatic reactions. Those things feel familiar and controllable. What they don't understand, and what quietly rattles them, is calm, especially your calm. When tension rises, and you don't rise with it, something short-circuits in their mind. They were prepared for resistance, not restraint. They were ready for noise, not composure. Your calm removes their leverage. When someone is looking to provoke a reaction, they rely on emotional spikes to feel powerful. Anger gives them something to push against. Fear gives them something to dominate. But calm gives them nothing. It doesn't fight back, it doesn't explain itself, and it doesn't rush to prove anything. And that absence of reaction creates more anxiety than any argument ever could. They start wondering what you know that they don't. Calm under pressure signals internal clarity, and clarity is threatening to people who rely on confusion to stay in control. They replay moments where they expected you to snap, defend yourself, or emotionally unravel, and instead, you stayed steady. That steadiness plants doubt. Not about you, but about them. It makes them question whether their tactics work at all. This is where the obsession deepens. They watch you closely because calm feels strategic, even when it's natural. They assume there must be something hidden behind it, a plan, an advantage, a deeper awareness. The truth is simpler and more unsettling. You're not feeding the chaos they depend on. And without chaos, their sense of importance starts to fade. Your calm also forces accountability. When you don't overreact, you don't give them a distraction from their own behavior. There's no emotional smokescreen, no dramatic exchange to blur the lines. Just their actions, sitting plainly in the open. That kind of clarity makes people uneasy because it leaves nowhere to hide. So while confrontation would give them relief, calm denies them closure. It stretches their discomfort over time. It makes them watch, analyze, and overthink every move you make. And that's why your calm isn't passive at all. It's quietly disruptive. It dismantles their expectations, exposes their insecurity, and leaves them more unsettled than any loud reaction ever could. Number 6. They study you because unpredictability threatens control. People are obsessed with what they think they can control. They thrive on patterns, routines, and predictable behavior because it keeps them comfortable, confident, and in charge. You, however, are not predictable. Your moves don't fit into their mental formulas. Your decisions don't obey their timelines, and your responses don't follow the scripts they expect. That unpredictability is disarming. It throws them off balance in ways they don't even fully recognize, and that's why they feel compelled to study you obsessively. Every action you take that defies expectation becomes a puzzle they need to solve. When you respond calmly to pressure instead of panicking, when you make choices that seem counterintuitive but end up working, when you move forward without seeking validation, all of it signals that control is slipping from their hands. They can't influence, predict, or manipulate outcomes the way they thought they could, and that loss of control feels deeply uncomfortable. Their attention intensifies because the unknown terrifies them more than failure ever could. Unpredictability doesn't just challenge their logic, it challenges their sense of power. They watch you like a case study, hoping to decode patterns where none exist, trying to reduce your autonomy to something digestible. Every time you act outside their expectations, they're forced to adjust their assumptions, and the constant adjustment fuels the obsession. The more impossible it becomes to predict your moves, the harder they try to keep up, analyze, and understand. Your unpredictability also exposes their own limitations. They see themselves as rational, organized, capable, but your fluidity reveals that life isn't entirely controllable, and not everyone bends to external pressures the way they assume. That realization is uncomfortable, even threatening, so they observe you relentlessly, not to celebrate your independence or originality, but to reclaim some semblance of control over someone who refuses to be contained. Every glance, every note, every replayed memory is a desperate attempt to map what cannot be mapped. Your unpredictability is the silent disruptor that makes their obsession grow. It's a subtle, unshakable reminder that true freedom cannot be watched into submission, and that awareness alone makes you uncatchable. Number 7. Obsession grows when they realize you're not seeking their approval. Most people operate with invisible strings attached to approval. They seek recognition, validation, or at least acknowledgement from those around them to feel secure. Your presence threatens that unspoken system because you don't play by those rules. You don't perform for their applause, you don't over-explain yourself, and you don't bend to be liked. That alone ignites obsession because it forces them to confront a truth they can't accept. Your value exists independently of their opinion. When someone realizes they can't influence your self-worth, it makes them uncomfortable in ways that aren't obvious. Approval is a subtle form of control. When they give it, they feel power. When you don't need it, that power evaporates. And humans, even those who try to hide it, instinctively obsess over what they cannot control. They start tracking your every move, not to emulate it, but to understand it, hoping to locate a point where influence might sneak in. They analyze your decisions, your habits, and your calm responses, searching for a hint that they still matter to you in some way. Your independence dismantles the invisible hierarchy they rely on. It's a quiet disruption that leaves them scrambling to justify their presence in your orbit. Every time you ignore gossip, refuse manipulation, or continue thriving without recognition, it erodes their mental grip. That erosion fuels deeper observation. They dissect your life like a case study, as if understanding your methods might somehow give them the approval leverage they crave. The intensity of their fixation grows because what they can't have scares them more than what they can control. You are proof that influence is not absolute, that self-worth doesn't require external validation, and that life can move forward without them as directors. The more unbothered and uninvested you remain in their judgment, the more they circle, track, and study, trying to fill the void they cannot reach. Your refusal to seek approval is not passive, it's disruptive. It quietly undermines their assumptions, dismantles their sense of control, and keeps them endlessly obsessed. They watch, analyze, and overthink because the one thing they can't force, your autonomy, exists freely, untouched, and entirely out of reach. Number 8. They're gathering data because comparison stopped working. Comparison is the tool most people use to feel secure, to measure themselves against others, and to justify their place in the world. It's comforting because it creates a sense of control. I'm better than them here, or they failed there. But when you move through life without fitting neatly into the categories they've built, comparison fails. You can't be measured the way they expected, and that failure of their mental shortcut sparks obsession. They start gathering data because they need to replace the comparison they lost. They analyze your schedule, your interactions, your choices, and your demeanor like a scientist cataloging variables in a lab. It isn't admiration, it's desperation. They're trying to reconstruct a framework that allows them to feel superior again, to prove, at least to themselves, that there's a weakness somewhere, a point of failure they can point to and say, I was right, after all. Comparison becomes irrelevant when someone refuses to perform according to expectation. You didn't play their game, you didn't follow their rules, and you didn't give them the convenient markers they could measure. That leaves them unmoored, scrambling for something they can quantify. Habits, reactions, routines. Anything that can restore their sense of understanding. Every detail they collect is a data point in a system that comparison used to handle effortlessly. Their obsession grows because the lack of a simple metric fuels anxiety. They can't just shrug and say, I'm doing better, because there's no straightforward better to claim. You're moving in a dimension they didn't plan for, a level of composure, resilience, or authenticity they didn't anticipate. Their minds loop endlessly, tracking, replaying, and analyzing, because that's the only way they can attempt to regain a foothold in your reality. Ultimately, they're not studying you to emulate you, and they're not watching for inspiration. They're watching to survive their own failure to measure you. Every note they take, every replayed moment, every detail dissected is a symptom of how powerless they feel when comparison no longer works. Your existence exposes the limitations of their shortcuts, and obsession becomes the method they cling to when everything else falls apart. Number 9. You represent an outcome they can't reverse engineer. Most people live by formulas, steps, strategies, shortcuts, anything that allows them to map success in a neat, predictable way. They assume every result can be broken down, analyzed, and recreated. Then there's you. You achieve, survive, and move forward in ways they can't reduce to a checklist or a guide. That's why they watch you so closely. You're an outcome that defies their understanding, a process they cannot reconstruct, and a result they can't claim as proof of their own methods. Your life exposes the limitations of rigid thinking. Every time you succeed without following the expected steps, without dramatizing effort, without performing for anyone's approval, it becomes impossible for them to translate your actions into their familiar formulas. They scan for patterns, dissect your timeline, and scrutinize every choice, hoping to extract a rule they can apply. But the truth is, what you embody, resilience, strategy, intuition, and composure, doesn't come in predictable chunks. It can't be copied, forced, or measured. That unpredictability is both mesmerizing and infuriating to them. The obsession grows because humans are instinctively drawn to what they cannot replicate. It triggers a mix of envy, disbelief, and anxious curiosity. They replay moments where you excelled, rewind interactions where you made calm, decisive choices, and overanalyze behavior that seems effortless. Every detail becomes a potential clue, even though the real reason for your success is internal, unquantifiable, and personal. They're not studying you to match you. They're studying you to understand how you slipped through the framework they rely on. They need to reconcile the uncomfortable fact that some outcomes are not predictable, that effort doesn't always conform to formula, and that results can exist outside their grasp. Your existence challenges their assumptions about cause and effect. The harder it is to reverse engineer you, the more they fixate, and the more intense the observation becomes. Every move you make that they can't decode reinforces their obsession, because you are a living example of something they can't control, can't imitate, and can't reduce to a simple blueprint. Number 10. Their fixation is fueled by unanswered questions, not hatred. Obsession rarely comes from hate. Hatred is loud, fast, and exhausting. Obsession is quiet, methodical, and persistent. What keeps someone watching your every move isn't a desire to hurt you. It's a deep, unsettling curiosity about things they can't explain. They are drawn to you because you leave questions in your wake, questions that shake the foundations of what they think they know. Why didn't you react the way they expected? How did you stay calm when everything around you was chaos? How are you still moving forward when they thought circumstances would break you? These unanswered questions grip them in a way anger never could. Every decision you make becomes a puzzle they can't solve. Your consistency under pressure, your quiet confidence, and your ability to survive without making noise disrupt their mental comfort zone. They replay interactions, analyze patterns, and monitor your behavior in a desperate attempt to answer the questions they can't ask out loud. It's not about copying you or bringing you down. It's about understanding how someone could defy expectations and operate outside the rules they themselves follow. This kind of fixation is slow burning. It doesn't tire easily because unanswered questions demand attention. Each time they see you make progress, handle adversity, or remain unshaken, it adds another layer to their mental file. Their obsession grows not because they want to confront you, but because the mystery you represent refuses to resolve. Their minds loop endlessly, piecing together a narrative that aligns with the reality they cannot fully comprehend. Unanswered questions also create tension for them internally. They are forced to reckon with the idea that your success, calm, and resilience exist independently of them. No manipulations, no criticism, no gossip, and no effort on their part can explain why you remain unbothered. Your life presents a reality that they cannot reduce to theory or formula, and that is deeply unsettling. What they are experiencing is a compulsion to observe, dissect, and understand, because curiosity about the unknown is stronger than hatred ever is. The more you defy explanation, the deeper their fixation grows, and the more they are forced to acknowledge that some things, like your strength, your composure, and your survival, cannot be tamed, manipulated, or solved. Number 11. They watch you because you didn't become what hurt you. Most people expect trauma, betrayal, or hardship to leave visible scars. They assume pain will bend you, shape you, or even break you, and they anticipate seeing evidence of it: bitterness, defensiveness, fear, or chaos. That's the story they rely on to make sense of the world. Hurt produces damage, and damage is predictable. Then there's you. You endured challenges that would have crushed others, yet you didn't turn toxic, manipulative, or bitter. You didn't carry the weight of their expectations or mirror the negativity thrown at you. That refusal to conform to the damage they expected makes them fixate. They are drawn to every detail of your life because your resilience disrupts the narrative they constructed in their minds. They expected a version of you shaped by suffering, and instead, you show up whole, composed, and even thriving. It unsettles them because it contradicts cause and effect logic. How could someone endure what they did, survive without visible wounds, and still move forward without bitterness? Their minds can't reconcile it, so they watch. They study patterns, replay interactions, and analyze choices, searching for a crack they're convinced must exist. Your ability to rise without absorbing the poison of your circumstances exposes their own weaknesses. It highlights moments where they let negativity linger, where they allowed bitterness to grow, or where they failed to reclaim control over their own reactions. Watching you becomes a way to silently grapple with the uncomfortable truth that suffering doesn't have to produce the expected results. The obsession grows because your strength is quiet but undeniable. You didn't fight back the way they predicted, you didn't collapse, and you didn't perform suffering for attention. Your life refuses to validate the assumptions they made about struggle and survival, and that impossibility keeps them fixated. Every calm decision, every unshaken step forward, and every example of grace under pressure is a reminder that the rules they thought applied to pain don't apply to you. They are obsessed because you survived in a way they can't reverse, can't mimic, and can't fully understand. You didn't become what hurt you, and that reality keeps them watching, analyzing, and quietly shaken by the power of your unbroken presence. Number 12. Obsession intensifies when they realize you're still evolving. Most people measure others by fixed standards: achievements, possessions, reputation, or status at a particular point in time. They feel comfortable when someone can be neatly categorized, studied, or predicted. You, however, refuse to stay in one place. You evolve constantly, quietly, and deliberately, without needing anyone to notice. Every time they think they've figured you out, you shift. Every time they believe they understand your limits, you expand them. That continuous growth terrifies them and keeps them glued to your every move. The intensity of their observation comes from the fear of irrelevance. They are accustomed to thinking in static terms, measuring success and failure as if life is a snapshot. You operate in motion, and that motion exposes their stagnation. Watching you is their way of trying to catch up, to find patterns, or to predict the next phase. But the truth is, your evolution is personal, intuitive, and impossible to fully decode. Their fixation grows because you refuse to be frozen in their mental model. Your continuous progress also disrupts their sense of superiority. They rely on comparison to feel in control, to justify their choices, and to maintain the illusion that they understand life better than others. When you keep evolving without performing for them or seeking approval, it underlines their own inaction and forces them to confront the reality that personal growth doesn't happen on someone else's schedule. Every change you make, every new skill you develop, every level you reach quietly amplifies the pressure on them, but also amplifies their obsession. The paradox is that the less you try to impress them, the more attention they pay. They study your habits, your mindset, your decisions, all in an attempt to decode the how behind your evolution. But there is no formula to your growth. It's steady, organic, and entirely self-directed. Their obsession is fueled not by envy alone, but by the frustration of witnessing transformation they cannot replicate and cannot control. You are a moving target, not because you hide, but because you refuse to stay the same. And that is what makes them obsess. Every new version of you, every evolved step, every quiet triumph reinforces the undeniable truth. You are evolving beyond their reach, and that is both fascinating and infuriating to those trying to map you. Number 13. They're not trying to expose you. They're trying to reassure themselves. The obsession people have with you isn't always about you. Most of the time, it's about them. Every note they take, every interaction they replay in their minds, every subtle detail they dissect is an attempt to soothe their own insecurities. They want proof that you are human, that you have flaws, that your resilience isn't limitless. Watching you becomes a way to reassure themselves that the world is still predictable, that strength, composure, and success are not as unattainable as they fear. Your calm, your quiet confidence, and your ability to move through challenges without being rattled creates discomfort for them because it contradicts their assumptions about how life works. They want the narrative to make sense, and when it doesn't, they fixate. They aren't collecting evidence to undermine you or bring you down. They're collecting it to answer the questions they are too afraid to face about themselves. Why aren't they like you? How did you survive when they would have crumbled? What are they missing that allows someone else to move so effortlessly through pressure? This obsession grows because every interaction with you reminds them that they aren't measuring up, not by your standards, but by their own internal expectations. Their mind becomes a constant loop of analysis and comparison, not to compete with you publicly, but to internally reassure themselves that the world still functions on rules they understand. Every note, every replayed observation is an attempt to make sense of someone who refuses to fit neatly into the categories they rely on. Your life, your resilience, and your composure shine a light on their insecurities, and that is both fascinating and threatening. They watch and study not because they are trying to catch you or expose flaws, but because they desperately need reassurance that your strength is not supernatural, that your success is understandable, and that the order of the world hasn't been completely disrupted by your existence. Their obsession is a mirror of their fear and self-doubt, reflecting a desperate need for certainty in a reality you quietly prove doesn't obey their rules. And the harder they try to reassure themselves, the more they are drawn in, endlessly fixated on someone they cannot fully control, explain, or predict. Number 14. The moment they stop watching is the moment they accept defeat, and they're not there yet. Obsessive attention doesn't fade because people like you. It persists because your existence challenges everything they thought they understood about control, influence, and prediction. They keep watching, analyzing, and replaying every move you make because surrendering to the reality of your resilience feels unbearable. To stop observing would be to admit that they have no power over you, no leverage, and no hidden edge that could bend your life to their expectations. They're trapped in a loop, caught between curiosity, fear, and the stubborn need to find cracks that simply aren't there. This fixation isn't casual. It's methodical, persistent, and uncomfortable to witness from the outside. They note your timing, your choices, your calm responses, and your ability to thrive under circumstances that would shake most people. Every detail they scrutinize is a silent attempt to locate a weakness, a single point where they can reclaim the narrative they thought they controlled. But the more they watch, the more obvious it becomes that there is nothing to catch. Your life moves on its own terms, and that alone is infuriatingly undeniable. They continue to observe because admitting defeat would force them to confront an unpleasant truth. Some people cannot be tamed, predicted, or understood through the lens of expectation. Their obsession is fueled by the hope that one day something will slip, some invisible fracture will appear, and they can finally reclaim the control they crave. Every calm decision, every unshaken step forward, and every success you achieve without their input stretches that hope thinner, yet still they linger. The irony is that your unbothered presence quietly demonstrates exactly what they can't face. That your life isn't theirs to manage, and your power is internal, unshakable, and independent of their scrutiny. The moment they stop watching is the moment they accept that reality. Until then, the observation continues, growing more intense, more desperate, and more revealing of their own insecurities. They are obsessed not with changing you, but with surviving the fact that you exist outside of their control. And until they can accept that, their eyes remain fixed, their minds looping, and their obsession alive. The reality is this: the intensity of attention you receive from certain people isn't random, and it isn't about you in the way they might want you to believe. It's a reflection of the disruption you bring into their world. The disruption of expectation, predictability, and control. They watch, analyze, and obsess not because they want to celebrate your life, but because your calm, your resilience, and your independence expose truths they are too afraid to face within themselves. You survive when others crumble. You evolve when others stagnate. You rise above what was meant to break you, and in doing so, you exist in a space they cannot reach, cannot fully understand, and cannot contain. Every glance they cast, every mental note they take, every replayed interaction in their mind is a testament to the quiet power you wield. You don't need to fight, argue, or perform for attention. You don't need to validate yourself to anyone. Your very presence is evidence of strength, endurance, and autonomy, qualities that cannot be copied, measured, or predicted. And the more unbothered you remain, the deeper their fixation grows, because obsession always stems from a need to understand what cannot be controlled. At the end of the day, the fixation of others is not your burden. It is your reflection. It is proof that your life, your choices, and your evolution are undeniable. You are living outside their scripts, beyond their reach, and in ways that silently challenge everything they thought they knew about people, power, and possibility. You are uncatchable, untouchable, and unexplainable to those who rely on patterns and control. That is your quiet victory, and it will continue to unsettle, fascinate, and demand attention as long as you keep moving forward on your own terms. If this video resonated with you, make sure you subscribe to the channel to never miss a breakthrough moment. Like this video to let us know the message landed. Comment below with your own experiences so we can dive deeper together. And share this with someone who needs to see it, because understanding the way people fixate on your power is the first step to embracing it fully. Don't let anyone else's obsession define you. Own your strength and watch the world try to catch up. God bless you.